One quiet afternoon in September in Taiwan, a young man stepped onto a public bus, expecting nothing more than a routine ride home. A forgettable trip, the kind you barely remember once it's over. At least, that's what he believed in that moment. He had no idea that within hours, this ride would become the most terrifying experience of his entire life. And what makes this story especially disturbing is that it doesn't rely only on memory or emotion. During those long hours on the road, he captured a photograph, an image of whatever was sharing that bus with him. Something he could never explain. No matter how skeptical you are, that image alone is enough to make this story impossible to ignore. On the afternoon of September 4th, 2017, a young man named Zhu was sprinting through a bus terminal in southern Taiwan. His bus to the capital city, Taipei, was about to leave, and he was dangerously close to missing it. He already knew what being late usually meant: a packed bus, strangers pressed against him, and a miserable seat for a long ride. So he ran harder. Breathing heavily, he finally spotted the bus parked along the curb outside the station. Relief hit him instantly. He hadn't missed it. He rushed over, and the driver noticed him just in time, opening the doors. Zhu climbed aboard, handed over his ticket, and was casually told to take a seat. As Zhu stepped into the aisle, something felt off. At first, he couldn't explain it. He had taken this exact route countless times before. He knew this bus was almost always full, loud, crowded. But as he slowly walked forward, the truth settled in. The bus was completely empty. No passengers, no movement, no voices, just Zhu and the driver. For a moment, confusion set in. Had he boarded the wrong bus? He checked the time. Everything matched. He knew the schedule. He knew the route. This was definitely the right one. He considered asking the driver, but before he could turn around, the doors hissed shut. The engine started. The bus pulled away from the terminal. Zhu hesitated, then laughed it off internally. Maybe this was just luck. A rare moment of peace, an entire bus to himself. He chose a seat near the front, sat down, and let his body relax as the driver merged into traffic and eventually onto the highway. The ride felt strangely calm. This wasn't a short journey. It would take nearly 6 hours. 6 uninterrupted hours of quiet. No noise, no people, just the road rolling past the window. It felt almost luxurious, too good to be true. Zhu leaned back, watching the scenery blur by, enjoying the silence. And then he heard it. A woman coughing. The sound came from directly behind him. Every muscle in Zhu's body tightened. He snapped his head around, his heart instantly racing. He had already checked the bus. He knew it was empty, but when he looked, there was no one there. The seats behind him were vacant, still, silent. His pulse hammered as his mind scrambled for an explanation. Maybe the wind was rushing through a cracked window. Maybe the sound echoed strangely inside the bus. Maybe it had come from the driver and just sounded closer than it was. Anything but the obvious. Zhu turned forward again, forcing himself to breathe, desperately trying to convince himself that nothing was wrong, even though, deep down, something felt very, very wrong. Maybe the wind was slipping through the bus at just the right angle, creating a sound that only seemed like it came from behind him. Or maybe the cough hadn't come from the back at all. Maybe it was the driver, and his brain simply got confused about the direction. Zhu clung to these explanations, repeating them silently, almost desperately. It couldn't have been a woman coughing. That was impossible. There was no one else on the bus. He forced himself to breathe slower. After a few minutes, the tension in his shoulders began to ease. His heart rate settled. Eventually, he convinced himself it had been nothing more than a strange acoustic illusion, a random sound amplified by an empty space. An unsettling moment, sure, but harmless. With that thought, Zhu leaned back into his seat and let the calm return. The bus hummed steadily as it rolled down the highway. The darkness outside pressed against the windows. Surrounded by silence, Zhu slowly drifted into sleep. When he woke up, it took him a moment to remember where he was. His head felt heavy, his thoughts sluggish. He blinked and looked out the window. Night had fully settled in. Streetlights flashed by in slow, rhythmic intervals. He checked the time and realized they were roughly halfway to their destination. That's when he noticed a message on his phone. It was from the friend he had just been visiting, the last person he'd seen before boarding the bus. The message was casual, almost boring, asking how the ride home was going. Zhu hesitated, then replied honestly. He told his friend that the bus was completely empty, that he was the only passenger, that he had the entire bus to himself. Almost immediately, his phone buzzed again. His friend didn't believe him. Anyone who took that route knew it was always packed, always noisy, always full. His friend demanded proof, so Zhu did what anyone would do. He opened his phone's camera, turned around in his seat, and snapped a photo of the back of the bus. When he looked at the image, disappointment washed over him. The photo was blurry and grainy. The lighting inside the bus was poor, and his phone didn't have a flash. It didn't prove anything. That's when Zhu remembered the camera in his bag. Photography wasn't just a hobby for him. It was something he took seriously. He reached down, unzipped his bag, and carefully pulled out his high-quality digital camera. If anything could capture the truth, it was this. He turned around again and took another photo. The moment the image appeared on the screen, his stomach tightened. Something was wrong. He zoomed in slightly, then more. His breath caught in his throat. Certain this had to be some kind of mistake, Zhu immediately began checking the camera's settings. He inspected the lens. Everything was functioning perfectly. There were no glitches, no errors. The photo was real. A cold fear crept over him. Slowly, Zhu stood up and walked toward the back of the bus. He moved up and down the aisle, scanning every seat, every shadow, every corner. He searched for any explanation that made sense. There was none. The bus was empty. Heart pounding, Zhu returned to his seat and grabbed his phone, intending to send the photo to his friend. But the screen wouldn't turn on. Just moments earlier, the battery had been full. Now the phone was completely dead. That's when the isolation truly set in. His thoughts spiraled. Should he tell the driver? The idea terrified him. If the driver panicked, if he reacted suddenly, the bus could crash. Zhu realized he was trapped, moving through the darkness with no one to help him. He set the camera beside him, curled slightly inward, and closed his eyes. Under his breath, he began to pray. Not for answers, just to survive, just to get off the bus. And then he heard it, whispering, soft at first, multiple voices, murmuring directly behind him. Zhu whipped his head around. Nothing. The seats were empty, silent, still. The fear inside him surged. He faced forward again, squeezing his eyes shut, continuing to pray. That's when another sound joined the whispers. The slow, deliberate creaking of seats. The unmistakable noise of weight shifting, of something sitting down, rocking gently. Zhu didn't turn around. He couldn't. The sounds grew louder, overlapping, blending into a disturbing chorus. Whispers, creaking, movement. His entire body trembled as he prayed harder, faster, his thoughts racing. Finally, desperate for confirmation that he wasn't losing his mind, Zhu lifted his eyes and looked toward the driver. Surely the driver could hear this too. But the driver stared straight ahead, hands steady on the wheel, eyes fixed on the road, completely unaware, as if Zhu were alone with something no one else could see. Zhu was completely overwhelmed with fear. His mind raced, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't think of a single thing to do. The sounds behind him refused to stop. The whispers, the subtle movements, the creaking. All of it continued, even though every rational part of him knew the bus was empty. Panic finally took over. Zhu pressed his hands tightly over his ears, digging his fingers in as hard as he could, trying to block out every sound. He curled his body inward, pulling his knees close to his chest, making himself as small as possible. In that cramped position, shaking and drenched in sweat, he prayed silently, over and over again, not asking for answers, just begging for it to end. He stayed like that for the next 3 hours. Every bump in the road felt amplified. Every shift of the bus made his heart jump. He didn't dare look up. He didn't dare move. He simply waited, counting time by the rhythm of the road, until finally the bus began to slow. When it came to a stop, Zhu hesitated. For several long seconds, he didn't move. Then, slowly, he removed his hands from his ears and opened his eyes. He expected the whispers to return immediately. They didn't. The bus was silent. No murmuring, no creaking, no movement, just the normal mechanical sounds of the engine cooling down. The driver was calmly performing the usual shutdown routine. Outside the windows, the Taipei bus station came into view. They had arrived. Relief hit Zhu like a wave. His muscles went weak. All he could think about was getting off that bus, putting distance between himself and whatever had been there with him. He hurriedly gathered his belongings, stuffing his camera and everything else back into his bag. He moved quickly down the aisle toward the front, barely able to think straight. But just before he stepped off, the driver stopped him. The driver had taken one look at Zhu and knew something was wrong. Zhu was soaked in sweat. His face was flushed. His eyes were wide and exhausted, like someone who had just survived something terrible. The driver asked if he was okay. Zhu almost lied. He was seconds away from saying everything was fine, from nodding and walking away forever. But something held him back. What had happened on that bus wasn't something he could just ignore. The fear was too real. The sounds were too vivid. And there was still that photograph, the one thing he couldn't explain. Now the bus was parked. There was no danger, no risk of distracting the driver. Zhu made a decision. Even if it made him sound insane, he needed someone else to see it. He swallowed and told the driver, "Actually, there's something I need to show you." Zhu pulled out his camera and handed it over. The driver stared at the screen, confused, clearly not understanding what he was supposed to be looking at. Zhu leaned in and zoomed in on the upper portion of the image, enlarging the ceiling at the back of the bus. And then it was impossible to miss. Stretching down from the ceiling was a massive human arm and hand, reaching into the bus as if trying to grab something below. The driver studied it silently. Zhu's words started spilling out, his thoughts racing faster than he could control. He explained that at first, he thought it might somehow be his own reflection. But that didn't make sense. He had been holding the camera when the photo was taken. If it were his arm, the camera would have been visible. It wasn't. Then he thought maybe it was the driver's arm. But that explanation fell apart just as quickly. The driver's hands had been on the steering wheel the entire ride. If the arm belonged to him, the wheel would have appeared in the reflection. It didn't. There was only an arm, no body, no object in its hand, just an arm reaching down from the ceiling. Zhu then told the driver everything else, the whispers behind him, the seats creaking as if something unseen was sitting there, the constant feeling of being surrounded by something he couldn't see. He described the terror of being trapped on that bus for hours, completely alone. After saying it all, after essentially telling the driver that his bus was haunted and backing it up with photographic evidence, Zhu braced himself. He expected shock, fear, denial, anger, anything. Instead, the driver calmly handed the camera back. Then he said something that chilled Zhu even more than the photo ever had. He told Zhu that the image couldn't be shown to anyone, that no one could ever know what happened on that bus. Because if people found out, it would destroy his business. Zhu froze. The driver wasn't laughing. He wasn't confused. He wasn't denying a single word. He looked accustomed to it. As if this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. The driver acted as if none of this was unusual, as if what Zhu had experienced was simply part of the job, just another day on this route. That calmness unsettled Zhu more than anything else. For a brief moment, he almost lost control. He wanted to argue. He wanted to demand answers. He wanted to ask why anyone would keep something like this hidden. But then he stopped. He didn't know this man. He didn't know what he had seen before or what he might already know. And more than anything, Zhu was exhausted, emotionally empty. He didn't care about the bus. He didn't care about explanations. He just wanted to be done. So he nodded. He told the driver not to worry. He promised he wouldn't tell anyone what had happened. He said he wouldn't show the photo to anyone. He thanked the driver, stepped off the bus, and walked away without looking back. By the time Zhu reached his home, it was around midnight. His body felt heavy, like every ounce of energy had been drained from him. He went inside, locked the door behind him, collapsed onto his couch, and plugged in his phone, which had been dead since the ride. The moment the screen lit up, messages flooded in. His friend had been texting non-stop, message after message, asking where he was, asking for proof, asking what was going on. Zhu stared at the screen. He wanted to tell him everything. He wanted to send the photo. He wanted to explain the whispers, the sounds, the arm reaching down from the ceiling. But the promise he had just made to the driver echoed in his mind. Sharing this could destroy that man's livelihood. At least that's what he'd been told. As Zhu sat there, frozen, unsure what to do, something outside caught his attention. He looked up. Through the window, he saw people walking slowly down the street. Dozens of them, each one carrying a glowing red lantern. Their faces were calm, focused, purposeful. And in that moment, something clicked. It was September 5th. That realization sent a chill through him. September 5th marked the beginning of a major event in Taiwan, the Hungry Ghost Festival. The people outside weren't random pedestrians, they were participants. This festival happens every year and centers around honoring the dead and making offerings to wandering spirits. Families prepare food, incense fills the air, and people burn imitation money, often called ghost money, believing that once it's burned, the spirits can use it during the ghost month. But there's another belief tied to the festival, a darker one. It's said that during this time, the gates of heaven and hell open. Spirits are allowed to walk the earth alongside the living. Sometimes, that's seen as a blessing, a chance to reconnect with loved ones who have passed on. But not all spirits are kind. Some are angry, some are restless, and some are dangerous. As Zhu sat there watching the lanterns disappear into the night, he suddenly understood why the bus had been empty the day before. There is a strong superstition in Taiwan that September 4th, the day before the festival begins, is when spirits travel freely across the world. That day is considered extremely dangerous. People avoid going out. They avoid traveling. They avoid empty roads and long journeys. The belief is simple. You don't want to accidentally cross paths with something that shouldn't be there. And Zhu had done exactly that. He had forgotten. He had brushed it off. He had assumed he was lucky, that the empty bus was a coincidence. Now, as memories flooded back, the whispers, the unseen movements, the creaking seats, the arm reaching down from the ceiling, a terrifying thought took hold. What if that wasn't random? What if he hadn't just witnessed something, but encountered it? Was whatever had been on that bus evil? Had it noticed him? Had it followed him home? Zhu didn't know. All he knew was that he had broken a rule people took very seriously, and now he might be paying the price. In that moment, the promise he made to the driver stopped mattering. This was no longer about a bus or a business. This was about his safety, his life. So he sent the photo to his friend. He explained everything. When his friend replied, the message was filled with fear. The image disturbed him deeply. That arm reaching out from the ceiling made his skin crawl. He admitted he didn't know exactly what it meant, but given the timing, the start of the Hungry Ghost Festival, and Zhu traveling the day before, none of this felt like a coincidence. And then, his friend gave him advice. Advice that Zhu hoped, more than anything, might protect him from whatever he had encountered. Zhu's friend told him something that sounded strange, almost foolish, given what he had just been through. He said Zhu should take the photo and post it on Facebook. Zhu hesitated. The idea felt wrong, careless, dangerous. But his friend explained that in Taiwan, there's a deeply rooted belief about bad luck. The belief is that misfortune becomes weaker when it's shared. That if something terrible is focused on you, the only way to survive it is to spread that weight across as many people as possible, to dilute it. It's similar to those old chain messages people used to send around. Messages that warned you to forward them or suffer terrible consequences. The logic behind them was simple and unsettling. Pass it on, and the bad luck won't stay locked onto you. Zhu's friend admitted this situation was far more serious than ordinary bad luck. But the principle might still apply. If something had attached itself to Zhu, if something had noticed him on that bus, maybe showing it to the world would weaken its hold. Maybe attention would scatter whatever power it had. At the very least, his friend said, it was worth trying. Zhu stared at the photo for a long time before finally making a decision. Then he posted it. Almost instantly, everything exploded. The image spread faster than he could follow. Notifications flooded in. Shares, comments, messages. The photo went viral within hours. Millions of people saw it. And at first, Zhu felt something close to relief. This was what he wanted. Maximum exposure, maximum dilution. The more eyes on the image, the less alone he felt. The less focused whatever was in that photo might be on him. But the relief didn't last. Instead of comfort, the messages took a darker tone. People weren't calming him down. They were panicking. Some begged him to take the post down. Others warned him that he had made a terrible mistake. They told him the thing in the photo wasn't harmless. They told him he was in danger. Strangers messaged him late into the night, insisting that whatever he had captured could follow him, that it could attach itself, that he needed spiritual protection, that he needed help. Reading those messages terrified Zhu more than the image itself ever had. The fear became real in a way it hadn't before. This wasn't just something in his head anymore. Other people saw it. Other people were afraid. Overwhelmed and shaking, Zhu deleted the photo. He set his account to private. He shut down his social media entirely. For the next few days, he stayed inside. He kept his head down. He avoided people. He avoided thinking. He told himself that if he did nothing, if he ignored it, maybe it would all pass. And for a while, it seemed like it had. Nothing strange happened. No whispers, no shadows, no signs of anything following him. Slowly, Zhu began to relax. He told himself it was over, that there were no ghosts, that fear had simply gotten the better of him. He convinced himself he was safe. Exactly 1 week after he stepped off that bus, on September 11th, 2017, Zhu was lying on his couch, scrolling through social media, barely paying attention. Then a headline stopped him cold. It described a horrific accident on a nearby highway, an accident that happened not far from where he lived. And as Zhu kept reading, a familiar dread began to rise in his chest. The article described a catastrophic accident involving a single vehicle, a violent crash. 6 people lost their lives. 11 others were left injured. The kind of incident that shuts down a highway and stays in the news for days. A tragedy in every sense of the word. Zhu read the opening lines almost machinalno. Then he kept scrolling. That's when he saw the photo. The image showed the driver standing on the side of a dark highway. His clothes were soaked in blood. His face looked hollow, exhausted, completely broken, like someone who had just witnessed something far beyond a normal accident. Zhu froze. His chest tightened. His breath caught. He recognized that face instantly. It was him. The bus driver. The same man from that ride. The same man who had calmly told him not to show anyone the photo. Zhu's hands began to shake as he scrolled further. And then the realization hit even harder. The vehicle involved in the crash wasn't just a bus. It was the exact same bus. Same route. Same driver. The very bus Zhu had been on exactly 1 week earlier. At first, his mind tried to rationalize it. A horrible coincidence. Bad timing. He even felt a brief surge of relief. Relief that he hadn't been on that bus when it crashed. But that relief didn't last. because when Zhu thought back to what he had experienced, the whispers, the unseen movements, the arm reaching down from the ceiling, the story stopped feeling random. Officially, the explanation was simple. Authorities stated that the driver had been negligent, that human error caused the crash. He was later sentenced to prison, case closed. But buried deeper in the article was something else. Video footage from inside the bus had been released. Security camera footage recorded shortly before the crash. Zhu hesitated before pressing play. In the final 30 seconds, nothing seems wrong at first. The driver is driving normally. His posture is steady. His eyes are on the road. He doesn't look tired. He doesn't look distracted. Then something changes. Suddenly, his attention shifts to the side. You can see it clearly. He notices something that the camera never shows. His head turns. His eyes track something moving beside him. His focus leaves the road completely. And then, slowly, he begins reaching downward, as if reacting to something inside the bus, as if interacting with something unseen. The footage never reveals what it is. Seconds later, the bus crashes. The driver never gave a public explanation. He never said what he saw. He never described what pulled his attention away in those final moments. All that remains is the crash, the footage, Zhu's experience, and that photograph. And when all of it is placed side by side, it leaves behind a question that refuses to go away. Was there truly something on that bus? Was it all just coincidence and fear feeding into tragedy? Or did something follow the driver and finish what it started? That's for you to decide. And if this story stayed with you, if it unsettled you, don't just scroll away. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, and tell me in the comments, what do you think really happened?